I remember this day as it was yesterday. My wife Donna, myself, and Amanda were walking back to the car from the Special Olympics that Amanda just competed in. On the way to the car, Amanda had an attack and couldn't walk. So Amanda and I sat down on the lawn. So basically I was hugging her. At that point, my wife left to get the car to pick my daughter and myself up so that we could get her home where she's comfortable and get through the attack. We have a son who's 38. He's living in Florida.
Frankie.
His name is Frankie. And we have Amanda, of course, who's 28, and Megan's 20, and she has a sister, Megan, 26. And Megan right now is living in Pittsburgh, and she just got engaged last week. She has a master's degree from Pittsburgh University in kinesiology, where it's the study of bones and what to eat and exercise. And she got involved in that primarily because of Amanda. And I also had a brother who died very young of diabetes, and she's looking to help prevent and to help people know enough what to eat, what not to eat, how important exercise is. And right now she's been up there for about a year.
Amanda Lynn.
Amanda Lynn. Okay, now what did we talk about? What's your favorite, what do you like to do?
The bus TV at home.
And what TV show do you like to watch?
My Little Pony.
Who's your favorite, My Little
My Baka.
How, you answered the question before I even asked. Yeah.
Yes.
And where are we going soon?
Florida.
And what are you going to do in Florida?
Go on some ice.
Where?
Eat Florida. E.T.
E.T., that's one of your favorite rides,
Yes.
right? And that's Universal Studios,
Yes.
that's not Disney. Don't mix them up. They get mad. What do you like to eat?
Bangers.
Spare ribs. Do you share your spare ribs?
No.
Why not?
I eat them all.
You eat them all. You don't like to share with me, do you?
No.
No. Okay. Do you want to say anything to the world out there?
No, thank you.
You don't want to say hi?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Shy?
I'm just hungry.
Oh, you're hungry, so that's what matters.
Yes.
Okay, you want some more cookies from inside? The special cookies I've been giving you?
Yeah.
Later. Bye. Okay. Well, it was May 13th, 1989, as a matter of fact. It was a Saturday before Mother's Day. We were living in Pennsylvania, and we were going back to visit our parents who lived in New York. And as we were getting ready in that morning, she just went into a full grand mal seizure. First time that we realized anything was wrong, and at that time we did what we could. Matter of fact, I think my wife wasn't even a nurse back then.
No, I went into nursing because of Amanda's condition.
And then what we did was, of course, we called 911 and we went over to the hospital, and they did all sorts of testing, from spinal taps to blood work analysis, and they kept her in there over the weekend, and by Monday they released her from the hospital and basically chalked it up to possibly an ear infection, and they really couldn't find anything, and they said if you don't see any symptoms then I wouldn't be concerned. And then after that, thinking back, we should have noticed symptoms before the next real event, which was February 20th of 1990. Before that, we noticed that when it was getting close to bedtime, she would become a little fidgety, and she'd have what I would call some attacks, some dystonic attacks, but we thought they were more of she was just tired. But then in February of 1990, it was the 20th, right around Valentine's Day, she had a dystonic attack, which we actually thought was a seizure. And that was our second trip to the emergency room. And of course, we went to a different emergency room, saw a different doctor. After the doctor examined her, he basically said to us that she has a seizure disorder, and that's when she first started to be put on seizure medication. And that was February of 1990. That's when we really knew something was not right with Amanda Lynn. Starting in February of 1990, we started seeing neurologists, and we actually went through a couple neurologists because we really didn't feel comfortable with a neurologist that we were seeing. Some of the neurologists actually split practice, so we saw a couple of neurologists. And then finally in February, almost 2 years to the date, in 1992, we actually visited Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for some testing. That's when we met the neurologist who was actually the head of neurology at Children's Hospital in 1992, and we started visiting him on a periodic basis. And again, we would go every 6 months and they would be prescribed some medication, and it seemed to be working, and they did EEGs, and they would tell us that she was having seizures, but they were not the grand mal type. Absence seizures. And during that time, my wife actually went back to school to become a nurse so she can get a better understanding of what was going on. And I guess even though we were seeing the head of neurology, and he was a great guy, I felt that a lot of things that we were telling him were getting dismissed. And he was saying it couldn't happen, and we were misunderstanding some of the symptoms. And then finally, in the beginning of 1994, I actually took a video of Amanda having an attack, and it was a dystonic attack, and we were calling them seizures. And when I went in to see the doctor, I actually showed him the videotape and said, this is what we're talking about, because I kept telling the doctor that she's coherent during these attacks and I can calm her down, and by talking about things like her trips to Disney World. And he was telling me I was out of my mind because there's no way that you can communicate with somebody that's having a seizure. And when I showed him the videotape, the first thing he said is, oh, that's not a seizure, that's a movement disorder. Now I need you to go see a movement disorder specialist. So now at that point she was put on not only anti-seizure medication, but movement disorder medication. And that was in 1994, and most probably around February of 1994. And again, we'd go every 6 months, and one of the things I mentioned to him was, you know, food has a basis on when she has these attacks, and again, it was kind of dismissed. And then what basically happened was we went in for an video EEG, one of multiple, and after about 2 days, I kind of pushed the doctor to say, she's never going to have an attack sitting in bed. If he wanted to have an attack, unhook her from the machine and let me play with her and run around the hospital floor to exhaust her. And he didn't want to do it, but finally he did. And within 15 minutes we got it on film, hooked her up to the machines, and of course, again, he was saying, well, that's definitely not a seizure, that's a dystonic attack. So with that, it was about 1996, and it was funny because every time we would go back to see the doctor, I would come up with something. Maybe this is something to do with allergies, and I wanted to actually do some pretty heavy-duty tests with allergies, and of course that was shot down. Thinking back, I think that if we did, we would have realized that carbohydrates had a negative effect on her. Another time, and I'll never forget this, and I'm going to share this with you, I brought this tape in, and I don't know if you can see it, this is the ketogenic diet tape, and this was in the mid to late 90s. And I actually said to him, I want to try this. And his response was, I don't know if you want to try that health-wise. You could try it, it's not going to have an effect on it. So we kind of tried to limit her carbs, but for a child who loves pizza, macaroni, and carbohydrates, it's very difficult. So we tried, and we didn't have an understanding of it either.
No, we didn't. And we didn't know if it was going to help her. And the neurologist didn't seem
He dismissed it.
motivated to try the ketogenic diet, so
he dismissed it, basically.
Yeah.
So
don't forget Eggleston Children's Hospital. We took her down there for the muscle biopsy.
Right. So basically, that was around 1996, and oh gosh, then basically what we started dealing with the seizure disorder, which we were told was under control by the medication. And every once in a while, the medication would stop working, and then they try a new medication. And what we found out later was some of the medications were actually harming her more than helping her. And in the interim, the muscle disorder or the movement disorder doctor sent us down to Atlanta to
Eggleston Children's Hospital
to do a deep muscle biopsy, and because he had thought it was a certain disease, and of course those tests came back negative, and again they were trying to switch medications and basically treating the symptoms. I guess my background is engineering, like we talked about earlier, and I've always believed that if you can find the root cause of a problem, the solution's real easy. The hard thing is finding the root cause, and every visit I would come up, or we would come up and do our own research and say to them, hey, let's look at this. And finally, in the late 90s, the doctor took me aside and said, listen, Mr. Saponaro, we really appreciate you doing this research, but you're wasting your time. He said, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, it makes no sense. We got the symptoms basically under control for the most part. Stop wasting your time finding the root cause and treat the symptoms. And that I really had a really hard time with that. But again, if this is what the medical industry is telling me, that the symptoms are more important to treat them than finding the root cause, let's go with that. And that was around the late 90s, and we were under his care, and we had the both doctors, and basically we would visit, and again, these are supposed to be the leading experts, and we were told that, you know, there's only one person in the world like Amanda, constantly. Only one person in the world like Amanda. And that was until, like I said, the late 90s, and she was under both of their care, and we accepted the fact that we had to treat the symptoms instead of finding the root cause. And I stopped. Long story short is, when she became an adult, we started seeing other doctors, and then finally in around 2012 was the first time we ever heard of the diagnosis of Glut1. When we were told that she had Glut1 deficiency, but again, it was taken with a grain of salt more than anything else, because if you name a disease from autism to cerebral palsy to any disease out there, we were told that she had that disease.
Meanwhile, she's gone through so many attacks, so many attacks she went through all these years, and there was nothing. We felt so helpless. We couldn't help her. Seizure medication wasn't helping her. The neuromuscular medication wasn't helping her. It was really scary, and she wasn't progressing mentally, cognitively. She was delayed, and it was scary because we didn't know what was going to happen next. It's really scary when you don't have a diagnosis and your child you feel helpless. You just feel...
it's like nothing you could do except hold her when she's having the attack.
Nobody had any answers for us. Nobody could tell us if it was going to continue to get worse.
And then, like I said, in 2012, that's the first time we were told about this Glut1 deficiency. And again, we took it with a grain of salt, because the first thing we heard was, okay, here's another diagnosis from a doctor that we didn't know, and is it real or is it not real? And that's
we had our doubts.
We definitely had our doubts. So,
like, you know, this is just something else they're throwing at us, just to shut us up.
Yeah, and to make us go away. Yeah. So that was about 2012, but that's when we got diagnosed with it. So it's funny because, and this is what I learned a lot when Amanda was young, they would teach her differently. They would teach her to put on a coat differently. They would teach her to do stuff like word recognition instead of reading. And I'll never forget, one day I was driving in the car with her, and she pointed out Burger King. And I was like, oh my goodness, she can read. And then I realized later she would recognize the symbols, and that's how she would know it was Burger King. She was about 25 or so is when we really started taking hold of the Glut1 deficiency and started giving her the right treatments. And right now we have to reteach her everything. So it's easy to do things the way that you were taught your whole life. What's hard is to reteach people how to do it the right way. So right now we're starting to reteach her how to read with letters and making words and sounds. Long story short is, when she was on the medications, it was like she was in a coma. She was there, but she wasn't there. The effects on her were dramatic. It was to the point where she couldn't go into a movie theater. Loud noises would bother her, crowds, new people, she wouldn't look in their face, she would look down at them, and it was all basically because of the medication that she was on. And she was on that medication until most probably 2014. Part of what motivates both my wife and myself is we don't want anybody to go through what we went through. It took so many years, and it's put us behind the 8 ball with her, and we basically now have to reteach her everything from scratch. And it's harder because we're teaching her how to do things differently. It's a challenge, but you know what? We're happy where we are right now, and we have a great support system, and things are going well. Right now, my wife and I are both retired. We took early retirement to care for her. We also have both her mother and my mother living with us, so we care for them as well. The effects have been traumatic. My younger daughter has seen her older sister go off on an ambulance so many times. And it's been hard, and it has its repercussions, especially on my younger daughter, because my younger daughter throughout her school years would make sure that if somebody was being picked on, she'd be the person that would stand up and say, that's not nice, don't pick on them, which basically turned the bullseye on her a lot. And she's a strong person, but she did a great job with it. You know, it's hard. It's still hard today because we don't have anybody to leave Amanda with if we wanted to even go out to dinner. So we're still trying to teach her day program about the disease. There are so many people that don't understand the disease. We heard about the disease in 2012. We actually had to change neurologists because she became an adult, and Children's Hospital doesn't deal with adults. For 2 years, we were looking for neurologists, and it's funny because it was so disheartening to walk into a neurologist's office and tell a neurologist, well, my daughter has Glut1 deficiency, and the first question out of the neurologist's mouth was, what's that? So we'd have to help educate the doctor who's supposed to be taking care of her, which is kind of funny if you really look at it. It's had a major effect on us, where from a work perspective, I wanted to make sure I was always available, and my wife always was close by as well, because we never know what could happen, especially before we started treating her the right way. It was hit or miss. So
some of the good things though that came out of it was the change in our diet.
Yeah, afterwards.
We don't eat as much pasta. We really don't eat pasta. We don't eat pizza anymore. We don't eat the breads.
Very rarely.
So we're healthier.
Yeah.
You know, because of the diet. We try to adhere to it for the most part.
That's real easy. I remember being in the doctor's office and showing him that videotape and being dismissed again. And if I can go back in time, that would be one point that I would have listened to my gut and said, you know what? It doesn't matter what this medical professional is telling me. It's something I have to try. And even with the allergist, I would have done it differently. I would not have allowed the medical specialist who was the allergist to basically dismiss me as well, saying that allergies isn't causing this. And my gut said differently, and I should have listened to my gut. If I could do it differently back then, and that was in the late 90s, I would have put her on the ketogenic diet that much earlier, and she wouldn't have had as much of delays and as much problems. I know that for a fact today. And I would listen to my gut instead of listening to the medical doctors. And if the medical doctor didn't want to help me, I would have found the medical specialist that would have. You know, it's a shock when you find out, and then it's the realization, does she really have this? But I'm going to tell you, since we found the diagnosis, things have changed so drastically. In 2014 was when we first started seeing a neurologist who we basically demanded to start decreasing the seizure medication, and we actually had to push him. He did not want to do that. And again, we listened to our gut that time, and she's the one who pushed it more than me.
And he said, I'm not going to take her off the anticonvulsants. I said, let's do an EEG, and if she has a clear, clean EEG, then let's try taking her off slowly. I finally convinced him to do that, and I'm glad we did, because she's been off them now, what, 2 years?
Yeah, most probably 2 years. It took a long time because we had to slowly take her off of that medication.
Yeah, and it really made a difference
and
as far as her behavior.
Once you're diagnosed, you have people there that are your support system, and one of the things that helped us tremendously was the Glut1 Deficiency Foundation. So once we got involved with the Glut1 Deficiency Foundation, we found an unbelievable amount of resources. And you know, it was funny, we actually saw a Dr. Pasquale about 2 months before we went to the first Glut1 Deficiency Foundation conference. And it took us almost 8 months to get an appointment with Dr. Pasquale because of the prerequisites to meet him and to see him. And it was funny, as I started to mingle among a lot of the participants in the foundation, their stories were very, very similar to ours, almost identical, where they were dismissed by doctors. People felt they didn't know what they were talking about. And what was interesting is we tried to start the ketogenic diet right before we went to the conference, and we went to another hospital in Philadelphia, and they basically kind of, again, the doctor, when we mentioned to the doctor, well, she has Glut1 deficiency, his remark was, I know what that is because I just heard about it last week.
At a conference.
At a conference.
Oh, somebody mentioned that at the conference.
And see my
we were out of there.
we actually went to the nutritionist who basically talked to us for about 45 minutes about modified Atkins diet, because that's what was recommended to us. When we went to the conference, we actually found out that what we were told was completely off base. Wasn't even close to what we should have been doing. And again, we were listening to the medical experts. But when Dr. Eric Kossoff actually did his presentation, he started talking about the modified Atkins, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, this is all new to us. Yeah. We just came from a doctor's appointment 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and what we're hearing is completely different than what they told us. So then we started seeing Dr. Kossoff, and then we actually see his assistant, Dr. Savanka, who's just wonderful, and they've helped us with the modified Atkins diet. Since we started the modified Atkins diet and reduced her medication, her seizure medication, it was like she woke up from a coma. Yeah. We were able to actually take her to one of her favorite concerts. We drove to Washington and saw a Pokemon concert.
Yeah, the symphony. Yeah,
the symphony.
Yeah.
We actually took her to a couple baseball games to see her favorite baseball player, Derek Jeter. And what was funny was, before when she would have an attack, she would just give up. But I remember it was one of the last games, and we were in Florida visiting Disney World, and we went to go see a Tampa Bay Rays game against the Yankees, and she started to have an attack on the way down the steps. And we said, okay, well, we're going to call it a day. We'll just write it off like we've done in the past. And she said, no, Dad, I want to wait it out. She basically knew and comprehended that she could sit it out, and that's what we did. And we sat on some upper decker seats until maybe the second inning, and then she went down and she was there and she enjoyed the game. And I guess to get back to your original question, there's definitely, once you have the diagnosis, it's like
it's a big relief.
It's a world changer. We haven't had one emergency room visit since the diagnosis. We know what to do now. She still has attacks periodically, but we know that they're not damaging her. We know that the dystonic attacks do happen. We know how to treat them a little bit better now, and they're basically under control. And then to add to it, we started with the oil, the C7 oil, about a year ago. And since we've been giving her the C7 oil, she's more outgoing. She's more intellectually sharp.
She understands more.
She understands more. She'll debate.
She's clearer.
Yeah, she'll debate with you now instead of not. When she didn't want to do something before, she would just say, "I don't want to," because I don't want to. Now she'll explain herself, and we can rationalize with her. And we'll give her choices. You know, if you want to do something, if she loves getting on the internet, if you want to get on the internet, you have to get ready for your day program. She'll sit and she'll think about it now, where before she would just pout for an hour. Now she'll think about it for a couple of minutes, and she'll, like a teenager, she'll get up and she won't be happy, but she'll do it because she knows that if she does the right things, then she gets recognized for it.
You don't want to see somebody else go through what you're going through, but you could find out from them, you know, well, what do you do when this happens, or how did you find out, or, you know, it's just, now you feel like you belong somewhere almost. I don't want to say it like that, but, you know, it's...
No, it's true.
There are answers out there, finally, that we've been searching for so many years, and you find other people that went through the same thing, and you know, well, gee, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, and that was the big thing, to be dismissed when you say to a doctor, well, she would have this seizure/dystonic attack, and food has an impact on it, and they look at you like you have a third eye. It's disheartening. But when we went to the conference 2 years ago and other parents were telling us the same exact thing, we were like, I can't believe this. And just being able to talk to people and finding out, one of the things that we have a real great advantage about is the doctors recommended the modified Atkins, which is a lot easier to...
I don't know how people do it.
But the diagnosis, it changed our lives. It definitely, and it wasn't the diagnosis that changed our life, because again, like we said, we've had diagnosis before. It was the diagnosis and validating that's what she actually had. That's what changed our life tremendously. And one last thing is, right now she's on a movement disorder drug, and at the last visit with Dr. Pasquale, he basically said that we can start slowly taking that away, and we started doing that. And ever since we've done that, she's even been in a better mood. So it's going to take us 8 months to...
Baclofen she's on a very high dose of baclofen. Yeah, 80 milligrams a day, and Dr. Pasquale said, you know, he says, I don't think that's helping the dystonia, he said. So he said, if we could wean her off slowly, and I think it's going to take like 8 months, 10 milligrams a month, we'll see what happens. It might even make her even feel better.
And it has. We've noticed a difference just by taking 10 milligrams away in the morning.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be adding additional C7 oil And he said that that could possibly more likely have an effect with her intellectual level again, which is amazing. The attacks are different today than they were years ago, again, because years ago we didn't know what was causing them, and they would be very severe. And we'd still have attacks. As a matter of fact, when we just drove back from seeing Dr. Pasquale, she had an attack as well. So now her dystonic attacks are neck movement disorder, cervical, and she'll complain about tightness in her neck. Her arm will start flaring
uncontrollably.
And one of the first signs is her leg. So her legs will turn in. So when she's walking, it'll turn in to the point where she'll say, I'm having trouble with my feet. And at that point, we can normally catch it. What would cause these dystonic attacks could be anything extreme heat,
cold, exhaustion, exercise-induced.
It could be that
she's hungry.
That time of the month that she has, she's more susceptible to it. But at the end of the day, like I said, we can notice it more now, and we really haven't had a major one for about 2 years or 2.5 years. The last major one that I'm going to say we had when we flew to Texas.
Yeah, we got stuck on the plane on the tarmac for hours.
Yeah. And
we didn't have the extra medication.
Yeah, and it was just a nightmare. So she had an attack there for 2 hours, because they dropped us off in Oklahoma, and we had to drive to Texas.
So basically, it's the cervical, head moving, the arms, and the wincing. And it's painful. After about 15-20 minutes, if we can't bring it under control, it becomes painful for her and exhausting. Sweaty palms.
And she becomes more... She acts like she's drunk. That's the best way to say it. She becomes sillier, and she
face becomes distorted, and starts bending, because you know she's in pain, and you feel like you can't help her. And we usually pump her with Benadryl.
Benadryl seems to help a lot. Well, like I said, since we have the diagnosis and we're getting the right treatment now, I say every day's a miracle for us, because we never knew. We never knew what was around the corner. We know what's around the corner today. And like I said, since I've been retired for about a year now, my wife's been retired for about 2-3 years.
Yeah.
3 years. And right now we're working very well, and things seem to be going well. It's still a challenge. There's no doubt about it. There's challenges every day. And since we've been treating her the right way. Before, she used to have temper tantrums. I can't tell you how many times she kicked in the kitchen closets because she was so frustrated she couldn't explain it. Yeah, one time she actually punched my wife, and it was very difficult. And now it seems she's more under control. She knows more her actions, and again, she has a sense of humor now. Where before she never had a sense of humor. She has nicknames for us. One of my nicknames is Pillsbury Doughboy. So she finds it funny to call me that, and it's funny. And
don't give me my name.
No, so she. Listen, life is great because we have the diagnosis. We're treating the diagnosis, and we see such improvement. And with everything that's going, we expect a lot more improvement because we've been doing things very, very slowly and moderately. Because again, 25 years of doing things certain ways, it's so hard to stop. I kind of use the example with her brain because her brain is functioning at such a high level now as compared to even 4 years ago. I look at it as drinking from a garden hose, and all of a sudden now you start drinking from a fire hose. She has all of these things coming at her at once, and it's so difficult for her. So what we kind of do is we try to break it down, and we try to give her a little bit at a time, especially when things are coming all out at once. We do a lot of family vacations. Matter of fact, we're going to Disney World this year, and she's looking forward to it, and one of her favorite places.
Taking her to Nashville.
She'll be fine. She'll have
OCD issues that we have now, but other than that,
and
there's also not to fear the unknown. You know, now we know what she has. We know the disease. We're comfortable with the answers, and we know that a lot of people out there working on to find treatments.
Yeah, and the support system with the foundation has been unbelievable.
Big relief.
I'll digress a little bit. I remember when I first found out about the foundation, I called up the head of the foundation, and I got his phone number. I sent him an email, and he basically spent 45 minutes to an hour talking to me about the disease. That's when I knew finally I have some place to go where they care about the kids, they care about the adults who have to take care of the kids. It's refreshing to deal with people that want to do it for the people who have the disease and they're not out to line their pockets, or they're not doing it for their self-gratification. They're doing it for the kids and for the people with the diseases, and that's why I'm a proponent.
Dr.
Yeah.
Pasquale has been a godsend.
Yeah. I remember.
Savenko, she's been amazing.
I remember the first time that I saw Dr. Pasquale. He was the first doctor that was able to answer every question I had.
It takes his time. I mean, how long were we in?
45 minutes at least, and
no, it was longer than that.
And then at the end,
and you wouldn't leave until he said, "Are you sure you have no more questions?"
Yeah,
I don't think anybody ever spoke to us like that before in the medical profession.
Didn't dismiss anything we said,
Yeah.
and he had me breaking down in tears because I finally found somebody who can tell us the answers about our daughter.
He's a really good guy.
So it
Loves him.
it can be great. There are its challenges, like I said. It's not a walk in the park, but at least when you're walking in that park, you got a destination and you got a journey, and if you need help, you got the support along the way.